Okay, this is part 1, section 1, and it's called Being on the Same Page. And I want to begin by talking a little bit about how easy it is to be misunderstood, or some of the difficulties in giving instruction. So if you've ever looked at the help section of a computer program and got lost, or looked at the manual to find out how to do something and being unable to figure out, or you follow the instructions but they don't lead to where they're supposed to lead, then you know how easy it is to mess up instructions. Sometimes they give way too much that you already know, or they leave out too much so you can't figure out where you are or how to solve the problem, how to deal correctly with the situation. But one of the things is it's not easy to write an instruction manual, because you need to know the audience, and depending on who you think the audience is, you can leave out important points, or leave out steps that you assume the reader already knows. So the reader of the book gets confused, or the person who consults the manual gets confused and can't easily proceed. So my starting idea was to make it's a past, present and future spread. So I was going to make 3 30-minute videos, one for the past, one for the present, one for the future. I was going to keep it simple and easy. The problem is that if I condense everything down to fit 90 minutes, then I'm going to have to leave out various important points, and there would be empty spaces or small or large gaps that you may or may not be able to fill in easily. So you could get confused, or you could get annoyed, and I don't want that. So in what I'm giving you now, I'm trying to be complete, and it is pretty complete. But that's why the course is not 3 30-minute videos, even though people told me to keep it short because people don't like long pieces of information. What you get instead is now a number, I think there are going to be 47 videos of different lengths. Each one has a title and a number, and this is for reference. And the idea is that if you have questions or want more information in a particular area or about a particular subject, or you want a different example or another example. So, for instance, I may talk about a particular card in the past with this card in the future and what direction it would go in. But you may say, okay, that card's in the past. What about if we have this card in the present? What would it mean? So if you have comments or questions like that, or want more information, if you send me an email, I'll gather all the information together and put it into a text file, and you'll have access to additional information in all the different areas, or in as many areas as anybody out there wants to begin a discussion in. So as I say, the course on its own is quite complete, but it'll expand depending on what you want to know, or what you want, as well as what I add anyway. So this is part 1, section 1, and it's called Being on the Same Page. So this section is about how we can set things up so that we can get past the beginner stage, where we're dependent on the book or the manual that's supposed to have all the answers, but it never does. So with this in mind, you're you and I'm not. We've had different experiences and lives, and even if we're somewhat similar, we're not the same. And this can result in misunderstandings and confusion. I know what I mean by the tarot, but you can have a different take on it and what it can do or what it should do. So if we're going to talk about the tarot and understand what it's all about, it's going to be better if we find some common ground from which to begin. And in this way, our different experiences and expectations won't as easily get in the way. So I want to present some ideas first in order to create a meeting point. You don't have to accept or believe what I'm saying, but when you know my position, then you're going to be in a better state to see what I'm getting at. Right? There's going to be a better chance that we'll sort of understand each other. The other thing is, you can apply this idea for yourself when you're the reader. and there's a questioner who's different from you, but you also want to be understood. And I don't think it's enough for the reader to just talk common sense, because it may not be relevant for that questioner at that time. It may not answer the question that the person is there to ask. And I think that it's important to remember that the reading is about the questioner, who I think is meant to leave after the reading, to leave the reading in a stronger position to live well, however that may be, right? So they may hear what you say in a different way from what you mean or what you understand. And this can be a problem that I think we should make sure doesn't intrude too much into a reading. Let me give you an example, and that is, I used to teach a report writing class in our local college, and near the beginning I would say to the class as a test, okay, I would say, there's a good chance it's going to rain tomorrow. And then I'd ask people to give me a number, what percentage they would think I was saying when I say there's a good chance it's going to rain tomorrow. And I was say surprised, but I was amazed when some people thought, 60% chance it's going to rain or 65%, because that's very different from the 90 to 95% that I meant, right? So you can say something, but people won't always understand the same thing you are speaking about. And this can be a problem, especially with a tarot reading, where you want the person to leave better able to deal with their life. An example, let's say you've got two people walking side by side. They're walking along the street together, and an obstacle comes in the way. Maybe it's a table or a flower pot or something, and it gets in the way. One of the two people believes that if you're walking with somebody and you walk on either side of an obstacle, then something's going to come between you later, and you're going to have a disagreement or an argument or a fight. The other person doesn't see that, doesn't even know about that idea, and thinks nothing of passing on the other side of the obstacle. Right, so one passes one side, the other on the other. Later, there's a disagreement. So the first person thinks, I knew we should have walked on the same side of the obstacle, right? So the solution is for us to walk together. The second person thinks, you promised you wouldn't talk about that again, and yet here we are discussing it. So the solution to the problem is for you to keep your promise. So these people have different ways of solving the problem, or they see the problem in different ways. They may both be talking, or they may be talking at different times, but they're not really getting through to each other. So it's like two one-sided conversations going on. I think this happens a lot, but it's not ideal. So what I'm saying is, let's try to stop it occurring in a reading. So if we're going to talk about the tarot, I think it's a good idea to consider some points in the beginning, so we're on the same page, or we're at a similar starting point, so that when we talk, so we know when we're talking about the tarot what we're actually talking about. Not that one person is right and the other person is wrong, but it's so that we can be talking about the same thing. So if we can find, or if we can generate some common ground, then we're going to be moving in the same direction, and ideally towards greater understanding. So with all this in mind, the next few sections in part one, they're going to be set up so that we can communicate, and so we can do more with reading cards in the different positions, past, present, and future. But rather than dive into it and start working with cards, I think it makes more sense to take some time and discuss a few different ideas, so that when we do actually begin to talk about cards, we know what we're talking about. At the end of a number of the sections, I'm going to suggest, it's not homework, it's not an exercise, I'm calling it a follow-up. And it's a bit like something you can do in your own time for yourself that relates in some way to the kind of topic that's been covered in a particular section. So the follow-up for this part one, section one, is think of times when you yourself said or did something and the other person or the other people took it in a different way, or they took it the wrong way. So your message was misunderstood, right? Because it has happened to you, and you've misunderstood other people. But if you can remember some examples of when this happened, it's going to be a reminder for you when you're doing a reading that you should develop the habit of saying things that can be understood in only one way. There's no room for a misunderstanding. And that makes you a more effective reader. So, if you can get rid of casual talking and casual descriptions that can mean more than one thing or that can mean anything, right? Then, if you make yourself have a clear picture in mind about what you're saying as you're speaking, you're going to be a much better reader. And the person, the questioner, is going to leave with a clearer understanding of what to do and how to go about dealing intelligently with the situation that they've got in front of them.